right, happy Monday, everybody. Favorite day of the week. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about why mission matters, but in order to know how to tell this story, I just need to know a little bit about the room. So we're ready to show of hands for startups and founders. Who works at a medium-sized company? So actually, let's start with small first. If you're from 0 to, let's say, 30 people, put up your hand. If your organization that you're in is 0 to 30 people, okay. If you're about 30 to, let's say, 150 people, put up your hand. Okay, so we'll call that the middle-sized company. If you're about 150 to 1,000 people in your organization total, put up your hand. Okay, and if you're a monster business, the kind that eat the rest of us alive, 1,000 or more, put up your hand. Okay, so that's a pretty decent split in the room. Okay, we're skewing a little bit to the small companies, but we've got a really decent split. So I'm going to talk to you about why mission matters. In order to do that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, tell you why mission matters, and then try to give you a couple of tools or tips that I've learned that you can apply in any size of those businesses, but probably in different ways and at different times, okay? So hopefully everybody in those different types of companies can take something away from this. So a little bit about myself first. So I started out my career in the late 90s, early 2000s in the original dot-com boom. I started out my career like a few of the young gentlemen that we heard from earlier today, asking questions in my late teens. And I started by starting a company, two actually, and they both failed, okay? And one of the first things that I learned very, very quickly, especially in the first business that I started, was that you can't do much on your own, all right? That actually any progress or velocity comes from having a team, and that teams can achieve incredible things. And I really took it for granted at the time, and probably because of my age, you take a lot for granted when you're young. But what I took for granted was that sense of purpose, the drive, the motivation that the team brought. And I think I took it for granted because I was in it. You know, I was the founder, it was my mission, it was mine, it was my business. I had nothing better to do, so I did it. I really just drove hard. But on reflection, it was really team that created forward progress. So that was a very important thing to know. Then after my first two companies failed and flaked out of those and got the motorcycle, drove to Bolivia, took a bit of time out to ride out the dot-com crash, came back at a really, really great time, early 2000s, big portal days, you know, the web was really starting to make money for the first time, and I fell into a couple of big businesses, okay? I actually worked for a couple of small companies first and then moved up the ladder to work for some larger companies. And what I learned when I did that, and I got a lot, you know, some of the great things about working at a bigger business is you get a lot of support, you get development, there's HR, you know, I went and did an MBA. Lots and lots of tools and tips were given to me, okay? I learned how to be a professional manager. So my title today is Chief Product Officer, okay? I'm on the management team, the executive team at autoTRADER.ca. I have about 160 people on my team, so I had to learn a lot about management, okay? Lots of professional tools. You'll recognize some of these tools: goals, KPIs, roadmaps, plans, governance, sprints, stand-ups, retros, right? Lots of different words, lots of tools, all really important. But they left me feeling like, you know, on a good day it was organized chaos. Almost every day it felt a lot slower than what I was used to in the way that I'd started my career. And there was kind of a gap there. And at that time, you know, and this is maybe about almost 10 years ago, I didn't really know how to put a word to that. I didn't know why I felt that way, what I was feeling in terms of the difference between working in a small business and a big business. So that's just a little bit about my story, and it sets up a bit about why mission matters. So a little bit about autoTRADER, so this kind of makes a bit of sense. I won't go through all this, but you know, some of you may know us, some of you not. I think the key stat line here is when I joined autoTRADER in 2011, it was part of the purchase of the business. We were bought for about $600 million by a Tier 1 PE firm called Apex Partners. And I had previously worked in an Apex company, and they brought me over to help with the business here. 5 years later, just 5 years later, we sold that business in 2016 for $1 billion more, okay? So the story I'm telling you, or part of the story that I'm telling you, is how do you create $1 billion of value in 5 years' time, okay? And some of the things that I learned as part of that journey with an incredible team at autoTRADER. Okay, so, yeah, sorry. I just find current events so depressing. I had to go back in the archives for an analogy because the world was simpler then. Goal versus a mission. Does anybody remember the actual mission name for the Second Iraq War? Okay. There were actually a few. They changed the mission a lot, but it was Iraqi. Go ahead.
Operation Iraqi Liberation.
Yeah, Operation Iraqi Freedom. Okay. Because if they said our goal is to depose a dictator in the Middle East and impose our worldview on others, probably would be hard to get followership, right? So the mission was Iraqi freedom, because we can all get behind that. We can all get behind the fact that everybody wants to be free, and we have lots of great things that we take advantage of, and we wish everybody else had that, right? So that's why missions matter. Missions matter because they have an incredible power to motivate people. And you remember the first lesson that I told you I learned is that without people, without a team, you just can't get very far. So I learned that as a founder, and it took me a much longer time, and I'm still a fairly young person, so we're really only talking about a decade or so of hard work and trying and failing all the time. But it took me about a decade to learn, and that as a leader, you need to motivate people in order to get things done. And that the mission is a really, really powerful tool to motivate people. These two slides help me actually bring a tangential point in here, which is about ethical leadership, right? As leaders, a lot of the tools that we're given are very, very powerful tools. And the people that come to work for us spend a lot of time with us. I know they want to be there, but they probably would choose to be somewhere else if they could. And we have a huge say on how they live their lives, what they do. So missions aren't just about being effective, right? That's why I put up the George Bush slide as a contrast here, right? Just to get you thinking a little bit. A great mission also brings purpose and meaning to someone's life. And if you can give that to them, guess what they give you back? What you need to be successful in your business. Now that's a great trade. That's a great trade. Good mission's good, bad mission's bad. Okay, now for the big company stuff. So for those of you that were in a startup or a small business, this might not be as relevant to you, but you might, like me, bounce out of there and end up somewhere bigger one day. If you're in a larger company or in a growth phase right now, please pay attention to some of this. If you can shortcut some of the things that it took me to learn, then fantastic. So the trick here is, what are we trying to do? We're trying to use structure to get around this problem of how do you create meaning and missions inside a large organization. Inside a small business, it's not as hard to do. No offense, founders, okay? But actually, if you're charismatic, if you've got a great mission, you're just going to imbue this on your people, okay? Because they're close to you. They can touch you. You've sold to them, right? We heard that, right? I think it was Nishant. You've sold your vision. So everybody that's really close to you in the kind of little nugget, they get it. So in founder-led businesses, typically this is kind of routine. As you get bigger, or the founder is not as close to operations anymore, this stuff gets harder, and you got to start using some management tools in order to make this happen. So what we've done at autoTRADER, and we've stole some of this from Spotify, we stole it from autoTRADER in the UK where I worked for a long time. Stealing is great, with respect and gratitude. But some of it we kind of added a little bit too. So the idea is, however you structure your teams to do whatever jobs you need to do, the fundamental unit of structure in our business is a squad, and a squad is defined by the fact that it has a customer mission, okay? And that's how we decide whether you should have this kind of team or that kind of team, right? I've been in businesses, and I've structured teams myself that are around a platform, a technology, a tech stack, or a product. Don't do that. Structure your teams around a mission, okay? Then you can use goals, KPIs, and things like that. But fundamentally, really, the short version of the story here is, if you understand how Agile, Scrum, or there's other org models that you can apply this to, how all those things work, then the only thing you need to take away from this is make the fundamental unit of that team the mission. And you know it's working when your team starts just going, nah, I don't want to do that. It's not on mission, okay? They're going to start running themselves. I won't go through this for you today. I just wanted to put up something really practical as an example. If you're interested in how to do this in your business, just reach out to me, and I'll help you out, okay? Thank you very much for your attention.
Questions?
So this time I actually do have a question.
Cool.
So a lot of the things you talked about are, I would say, more easier to do once you've got something that's established and you've got a team of 20, 30 people. For startups that are in an earlier stage where things are changing on a daily basis, you define a mission, but how do you make sure that the things you do align with that mission without missing out on the opportunities here and there, because you're always choosing,
Yep.
making decisions.
So the best advice that I can give to a very, very small or early stage company that wants to be mission oriented, and I would say this is probably advice to the founder, is you're the founder, yes, but you're also a leader, okay? And leaders have to impart mission onto others. If the mission isn't clear to you, and if it's changing all the time, that's hard to do. That might just be a natural phase of where your business is right now. You're pivoting left, right. But the momentum that I'm talking about that's going to come from mission-oriented is going to be when that stabilizes a little bit. You don't need to be huge. You don't need 20 people. You could have 3 or 4. But when your mission crystallizes, you know what you're here to do, and that doesn't change a lot, that's when it's going to really start moving for you.
Yeah. Can I just speak? Hello? No?
Sorry, I was looking.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. So on the slide, I just barely saw it, but there was an example of a mission for a squad.
Yeah.
How do you differ that from a mission for a tribe, like autoTRADER? What is your mission, and how do you enforce that to all of your squads, or how do you show them what your mission is on a day-to-day basis if they don't always work with the rest of the tribe?
Yeah, great question. So that's where, and again, we can, I can spend more time after just explaining how we learned all this, because we did it a lot through trial and error. So for example, we only instituted tribes last year. And the reason we did that is we had everybody as part of one big group, but we found there were too many diverse missions across the squads, and they stopped caring about each other. They were too successful at being mission oriented, right? They just, really wanted to do their thing. Let's say allowing consumers to sell and buy cars online, okay? And the reason that we created tribes is that we found that we could create themes around which missions were related, and really teach people about an ecosystem. And there's a concept in management called servant leadership, and this is where if you actually practice what you preach and you show up at work to try to help people, it all kind of makes more sense, because then tribes really understand that they have to help each other. And that if you're goal-driven or KPI-driven, incentive-driven as an organization, this is much harder to do, because you've taught people that the purpose of being measured is it's like a carrot and stick, okay? If I achieve my goal, I get my carrot, I get a bonus or whatever it is, right? I go home, I'm not hungry. And if I don't, I get a stick. Oh shit, I might be fired, okay? That type of culture really doesn't enable what I'm talking about here today. And that's hard, that's not easy to do, because those are effective management tools. I'm not saying they don't do a job, right? But if you practice servant leadership and you're actually there for enablement, then people understand that helping each other can be rewarded. And then if you have squads that are grouped around a theme, it can work. So the challenge is it's like this hierarchy and a ladder. You need a company mission, right? And then you break that down into related themes that creates your tribes. And then your squads have their own missions that then deliver that macro mission, right? And it's put as many hierarchies as you need for the size of your company.
Thank you.
One last question.
So it's more about the tribe and the squad. I know you just started last year, but are you thinking about the life cycle? Do you have an extended life for the squad, and how do you kind of bring them back into?
Yeah. So we when we initially started, we didn't want to chop and change squads very often, because we had moved from a project-driven approach into a squad-based approach, and what we didn't like about being project-driven is that a project has a start and finish, and then the people that work on it go away and do another project. And the bonds that they made, the things and the subject matter expertise that they learned go away. So, the forming, storming, norming, performing stuff. I told you I did an MBA, so I can keep with these management models. So, all of that you've created and invested in that team goes away. So we moved to squads. But then what we learned, and we didn't expect this, is that it's hard to keep a squad together. And mainly for the reason is that the squad either achieves its mission, or interestingly, like the question, I hadn't connected the dots here a second ago, but the squad actually pivots. They find out that the mission needs to change. And then sometimes the mission splits, and there's 2 missions, because the one we had before was still important. And then we invest and add more people and create another team. So actually the tribe has so far for us been a much more stable unit, because it's more connected to our business strategy. But the squads, we're finding that we're changing and reconvening them all the time. Too short a life cycle, I would say less than a year and a half is inefficient, because you don't have the time to ramp up that productivity. But we're struggling to actually keep them going for much longer than that without really changing something important about the squad. That's been our experience, but I would be happy to learn from anybody else who's seen it differently.